Today I'm going to show you how to create multiple trend lines or least squares regression lines in Microsoft Excel. And this is for multiple series of data, as Excel calls it. Or so what we need to do is, you see here I have time, and some of the times are the same. That's because all these bags were weighed at the same times. And each bag has a weight in grams. So to graph the trend line for each of these, the first thing we need to do is highlight all the data, including the labels at the top in the first row. So once we select all of those, then we're going to go to the menu at the top and we're going to go to Insert. Then in the middle section, which says Charts, we're going to pick the option that is directly above the word Charts. When you hover over it, it should say Insert Scatter, X, Y, or Bubble Chart. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to pick this first option that is a scatter plot. So here it is. Now I'm going to move this to another sheet just so we have more room to work. To create a new sheet, we go to the bottom and click the plus, and now you see we have a new sheet. I'm going to rename this. So right click on it and go to rename. And then you see it's highlighted and we can type over it. We're just going to say graph for now. So I'm going to click on the chart so that you see these little dots around the outside, and I'm going to hit Control and the X key at the same time. That cut the graph from where it is. Now I'm going to go back to the graph sheet, and I'm just going to highlight a cell here, and I'm going to hit Control V, and that pastes it in. Now I want this to be bigger so we can work on it better. So if you go to the bottom corner of the graph, you can grab hold of that point and make our chart bigger. Now, I don't want the actual graph to take up as much space inside the graph, the chart area. So I'm going to click on just the graph part, and you see how now it's got a box around the edge. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller in there. And then when you've got the 4 arrows like this that says plot area, if you left click, you can drag and move it around in there. And I'm going to move it just a little bit to the right. And then I'm going to extend my chart area further right. And then it looks like I'm going to have to go back and make my chart less wide. Now there's a reason I did that. You'll see in a minute. The next thing is I prefer my legend to be over on the right-hand side. And right now it's down here at the bottom. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to right click once it's highlighted. And I'm going to go to the last option that says Format Legend. Now over here on the right side, there's a box, and I'm going to, of different positions I can put the legend in, and I'm going to say I want it in the top right. So now it's in the top right. And that might be a little bit too far right, so I'll move it a little bit to the middle. And then I'm also going to make it longer and wider, and you'll see why in a few minutes. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is put axis titles on my chart. So with the chart area highlighted, you see this plus up here on the top right. I'm going to click on that, and I am going to add axis titles. It's the second option down, and I'm just going to click so that there's a check in that box. Now you can see that there are axis titles. So I'm going to highlight the horizontal one. That is our independent variable, which is time in minutes. So we'll just type that in there. Then I'm going to highlight the one on the left, which is our dependent variable. And I am going to type weight in grams because the units of the bag weights are in grams. Now I am going to add the least squares regression lines. So bag A is the blue dots. Let's do it first. I'll click on the blue dots. Then I'm going to hit the plus again, go down to trend line, but I want to hit the little arrow out here and then go to more options. Linear is what it comes up marked as to start with. That's fine. We need to scroll down to the bottom where it says display equation on chart and display the R² value on the chart. So as you can see right here, that put an equation and an R² value on the graph. Well, I don't like them right there, so I'm going to click on it and get my 4 arrows, and I'm just going to drag it down here to the bottom. And since we have more than one, or we will in a minute, we need to label this one bag A. Now let's do the same thing for bag B. Well, before we do that, I don't like the dashed line here. So I'm going to change that to a solid line just by clicking on the line again. And when I get this format trend line box, I'm going to click the paint bucket at the top. And then if I go down here to where it says dash type, I'm going to change that to a solid line just because I prefer those. Now let's do the same thing with bag B. So I'll click on the orange points, click the plus button, down to trend line, but hit the arrow, more options. And I'm going to put the display equation and display R². And before I move the equation this time, I'm going to go to the paint bucket and change that to a solid line. Now I'll go and I will move this equation. So I'll just click on the equation so it's got the box around it and drag it down to the bottom. Remember, we need to label this one bag B. And you can do the last one for bag C. So click on the gray points, plus trend line, but hit the arrow next to it, more options. You see we're on the paint bucket this time, so let's just go ahead and change the dash type to a solid line. And then we'll click on the 3 bars at the top. And that gets us to where we can put the display equation and the R value on the chart. Then we'll just grab hold of those, move them down, label them as bag C. And that's all we need to do. Now, just for prettiness' sake, I am going to realign all of this just so we can get things better lined up. And we also need to give our chart a title, which is weight versus time. And you can do this for as many series as you want. So that's all there is to it.